Welcome to the Main Character Podcast, where we share a collection of personal stories to create community and inspire real conversations. I'm your host, Brooke Taylor, and today's main character sharing her story is Cassandra Isbell. Hello, welcome. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you.
So let's start by you just introducing yourself. Tell us who you are.
I'm Cassandra, and I'm an audio engineer and a producer, and I do music for a living and some photography too. And I live in LA.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a small town, St. Charles, Missouri. It's a suburban neighborhood where not much crime happens. Yeah, parents lived in the same house my entire life. I didn't move until college, and I came back again for a few years and then randomly came to LA, but nobody from Missouri normally leaves ever.
Where did you go to college?
I went to college at Webster University. It was close to my hometown. I commuted to college, so I still lived at my parents' house all during college until junior year when I went to Nashville for a little bit.
And you were studying music?
Yeah, I was studying audio engineering.
How was that experience for you?
It was really difficult. College was really hard for me. I knew I wanted to do audio engineering, but I didn't know that it was such a, I don't want to say that it was a boys' club, but it really was so much more than I ever imagined. When I went into college, I was one of probably 3 women
Wow.
that were in the major, and I didn't realize all of the challenges I would go through doing that. And it came to a point where people were starting rumors about me or different projects. No one wanted to be my partner. Yeah, and then I felt like I had to be better than everyone else because I was so not included in things, while all of the guys were helping each other in the studio, teaching each other little tricks, things like that. I was not invited to those hangouts a lot of the time, and I really had to navigate and figure out all of this recording stuff myself. I knew nothing about recording or music at all. I knew I liked playing music. I knew I really liked music, and I knew I wanted to help people make music, but I knew nothing about microphones or equipment or any of the technical stuff at all.
That sounds very lonely.
Yeah, it was very lonely. I at one point thought about leaving the school because it was just getting really bad. It was getting to a point where I couldn't go to class without being told something or being sexually harassed, or I would get a better grade than a lot of the students in the class, and someone would make up a rumor that I was dressing sexy for the professor to get a better grade, or that I cheated, or I don't know, just wild stuff. Or I would receive photos on my phone in the middle of the night, if you know what I mean. And I would come to class the next day just not believing what I did not want to see on my phone. And it just felt really violating and lonely. And I did have some friends in college, and they really helped me through all of that and helped me stay in school. But it was very overwhelming. Unfortunately, the guys in my classes were really hard on me, and it made me so hyper aware of everything that was going on around me. And I went to Nashville for an internship. So by the time I got there, I was working at a recording studio, and I had my guard up so high because I thought it was going to be like how my classes were, how the guys treated me in those classes. And then it was nothing like that. It was so life-changing going there.
Well, it sounds like in school you are already like swimming upstream by not having help to or anyone working with you, not knowing what you're doing, you're alone. And then they're just adding this extra almost fear of or anxiety of this already a hard thing, and now I'm don't want to go to class because I don't want to deal with all this.
Yeah, I would get literal anxiety attacks before I knew I had to go to class or present a project, in fear that someone would yell at me, or that I would be made fun of in some way for odd reasons. It was just the most random things. And I didn't understand it. I kept coming home and crying and crying, and my parents would always tell me, "Don't worry, you're really good at what you're doing. They're intimidated." When anyone tells you they're intimidated by you, you're like, whatever, they're not intimidated by me. But the more I think about it, I was good at what I was doing during school. And when I did a project, I did it with excellence because I was fearful of getting a bad grade because it was the only thing that I had.
I feel like not all men, but a lot of men like have more of an issue with like pride and ego. And if someone's coming in who they think should be doing worse than them and you're like doing better, even if, I mean, I think even with other guys, if someone's doing better than them, they like puff up their chest and want to like be the best. So they're like trying to tear you down so that they can be better in any way they can.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really hard because I know a lot of the guys probably were not intentionally trying to be mean to me. I know that this was all kind of a rat race to get to the top of who's going to graduate and work in the music industry, who's going to be the best at mixing, who has the coolest project, things like that. And I realized looking back that everyone wasn't out to get me. And there were many, many instances that people were intentionally saying very harsh things to me that really discouraged me from continuing my audio career. And I have to look past those people, and I don't know what their problem was with me, but it took a lot of grounding with God and with what I felt like God was telling me to do in order to keep going.
Not just guys, like just people in general, they'll make comments that like they don't see as a big deal, or especially in today's society, like they belittle like hurtful comments. And they're like, oh, well, I'm the only one saying this. They are confident enough, it's not going to matter to them. But we kind of expect other people to do like work, like, oh, well, she's being lifted up by her friends and her family, and it doesn't matter if I say something to hurt her. And like a bunch of people do it, and they all think that they're the only ones. And in reality, it's like you don't know the like impact of your words, because I'm sure like if any of those people knew really like how it was impacting you, they probably wouldn't continue to do it. But to them, it's like a joke, or it's not a big deal. And I think people really need to be aware of just like that our words actually matter, and people remember them. Like people remember what you say to them.
Yeah. And I think it built up so much because all the guys were in different classes. And so, each guy from each class would say a comment to me, and they wouldn't know that the other guy said a comment to me already that day, things like that. And they didn't know that, someone in class called me, an effing idiot or something in the middle of class. And then later that day, someone tells me, oh, hey, like, nice shirt, like I'm staring at you, weird stuff like that. It's like it built up so much onto me, and I don't think any of them realized how much I was dealing with at the time. And it's easy to target someone who's different too. Being the only woman in a class is like, it's so different compared to a bunch of dudes in a class. So it's easy to just want to talk to me about whatever you want to talk about.
I think there's like a certain level of entitlement too, where it's like, oh, well, we're the masses. Like, she's the odd one out. We can say whatever we want because, like, almost like you don't deserve your place as much. When in reality, you deserve it just as much. But to them, they're like, oh, well, it's an easy target. Yeah.
Yeah. And it felt like a lot of them didn't take me seriously, which, I mean, I could definitely see oh, a girl signing up for audio school, is she really going to be into all the tech stuff and the gear stuff? Like, why is she here? They didn't understand me because I had God telling me to do something. If I would have said that in school, people would have said, you're freaking crazy. God's not real. And I don't know why you're listening to some guy in the sky.
Wait, so can you talk a little bit about how you chose to go the audio engineer route and like
Yeah.
God telling you to do this?
Yeah. The way I got into audio engineering is really interesting, actually. The church I grew up in, it's called St. Louis Family Church. They're an incredible church in Missouri. Very different compared to a lot of the churches that were going on around us, in a way that it's non-denominational. They follow the Bible, all of that stuff. But they were okay with you loving the arts or being different, and they accepted that, and they nurtured that. I joined the worship team, and I started doing that a bunch, and then they found out that I sing, and I was interested in music and piano, and I liked singing. And so we have a play that goes on also during VBS. They had a song in the play that I had a part where I was singing by myself. And they knew I was super shy when I was in middle school and part of high school. I was just so bashful, shy, not confident. And this girl, her name's Chelsea, she knew that I had something in me. And so she gave me this part. And I was dying on the inside, not because I was excited for getting the part. I was freaking out because I had to sing by myself in front of thousands of kids, and I had a mic on me. It was just my worst nightmare, basically. And beforehand, we always pre-record the songs before we go on stage because we're dancing so heavily that you're just out of breath when you're singing, and your mic is on, but you're having your voice underneath to support you, the song you already recorded. So I had to go into the studio, and they have a little recording studio on campus, on the church campus. And I went in there, and the guy who was there, he started recording me, and I went into the booth, and I was like, what is this? This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I want to be what that guy is doing. He gets to talk to the artist. He gets to be with them, coach them, make music. I was like, this is so exciting. Like, what is this called? I didn't even know what it was called. And then I was randomly talking to my friend one day, and I told her about what I did, and she told me, oh, that's called audio engineering. That's what I'm going to school for. And I was like, what? That's called audio engineering? That sounds so cool. What is that all about? Where do you go to school? And it's so funny now because she's not even in audio engineering. She that year moved her degree to biology, which is so opposite.
So opposite.
So it's crazy that I caught her at the time that she was randomly doing that. And I felt so heavily on my life, like God telling me, you need to do this. And it was just, it was overwhelming.
I feel like a lot of people who like music, they're like, I want to be on stage. I want to be a pop star.
Yes.
And so that's like a really cool way for you to say, okay, I love music, but nobody has to know who I am.
Yes.
Like, I don't have to be on stage. So I can definitely see like the appeal of that.
Yes.
It's crazy how many of those jobs are out there that we don't even think about, unless you're like in it, you don't know about it. Mm-hmm. That you don't have to be like the main one person on stage.
Yeah, there are so many jobs out there where you can just not be very social to people if you don't want to be, or you're good at impacting people one by one.
Right.
Which is what audio engineers do a lot, is they're in the room with one artist, probably one producer, maybe two, a manager. It's very calm in there. It's you with them, and it's not you having to perform in front of tons of people. So it felt like the perfect job for me. I rushed home. I told them, I want to be an audio engineer. I don't know how to do it. What do I do? And we started looking up schools all around the state. because my parents didn't have a lot of money during that time. We pretty much did not have a budget for college. Like, that just wasn't really going to happen unless I had a scholarship or something, who knows. But there were only 2 schools nearby that were teaching audio, and one was a 2-year kind of associate's certificate or something, and then the school Webster that I went to is a 4-year where you get an actual degree in audio engineering. And I visited Webster first, and I happened to run into a professor there who, you normally don't really talk to professors while you're touring a college often. And the professor told me, well, what do you want? Do you want a certificate, or do you want to show somebody that you have a degree, that you committed to something? And I was like, I absolutely want to show that I'm committed to something. And so we went to the financial aid office and talked with I guess you call them a counselor, but we talked with her, and I was just honest with her. I told her, hey, we have no money to pay for this school. It's really expensive, and I need to go here. And she was like, okay, let me see what I can do. And she came back to us probably a week later with news, and we met up with her, and she told us, okay, so because you're a woman and you want to do audio engineering, and because you had good grades and all this stuff, I think she got me a scholarship that paid for like 3/4 of the entire, anything that we owed. That scholarship paid for it. Yeah, I got a loan for the rest, and no problem. And then she was like, okay, it's really late. We're going to sign you up for whatever we can sign you up for. So I took the most random classes my first semester of college, because I couldn't sign up for any audio classes since I was so late, and I barely got in there, but I got in, and it was definitely God, because God, he brought us in. I felt like we had to go to this school, and he was just like, okay, this, and this, and this. We're going to make it easy for them. Now you're in.
Well, and I think when he wants you somewhere, there's like things are just easier, because like it's from him, and there's so much like peace about it. It's not like anxiety or worry or like, is this right? Like, you just like, nope, this is it.
Whenever I have a hard decision to make, I close my eyes and I imagine myself in each scenario, and I say to myself, which one makes me feel the most peaceful? Even if one makes me feel kind of peaceful, but this one makes me feel super peaceful, then I know, oh, well, it's probably this one, not the other one. And I don't know if that works for everybody, but for me it works. And that's kind of how I've lived most of my life, is whichever situation makes me feel the most peace, that's the one that I'm going to do, even if it's weird or hard.
I think they call him the Prince of Peace for a reason.
Yeah.
Because like the enemy, if he's involved, like, you're not going to feel peace. Like, that is not something that can coexist when it's what the enemy wants. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good like indicator of if you're on the right path or not.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard for some people to see that and feel that, because I think anxiety comes in very sneaky ways, and a lot of people feel anxiety over everything. And it's really hard for them to cut through where God is telling them what's peaceful and what's not peaceful. And then they just cannot decide what's right or what's wrong.
Then you went to Nashville, right?
I went to Nashville my junior year of college. Okay. And this was really impactful, actually, because like I said earlier, I had my guard up really high, and I was being super protective over myself. I was expecting to be berated with comments and for people to treat me horrible.
I think that says a lot about you, the fact that you like stayed in it, knowing like, well, at the time you thought that your whole life and your whole career was just going to be how it was in college. Like this is what I'm signing up for, and you just kept doing it anyways.
That's true. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, it's that undeniable knowing that you have to do it for God. I was in New York for an audio convention with my school, and I met this woman who is the head audio engineer for Styx, the band. old school rock band, and she's the head of this group called Sound Girls, and it's this group of women who are in audio who all support each other.
That's awesome.
It is the craziest group. It's amazing. It's such a help with any woman who is in the field of music because it's a common thing. All the stuff that happened to me is so common, which should not be that way, but it's getting better. I met a girl at the lunch that she invited me to. This girl was going to Nashville to intern at a recording studio, and she said, hey, do you have to do an internship? Do you want to do this? And I was like, yes. So I emailed that studio, talked with the guy who was in charge of the interns, and he accepted me. And then I went to Nashville for the summer and just helped out and worked at the studio every single day. And it changed me so much because all of the people there were so inviting to me. They taught me things. One of the guys he was kind of a mentor to the interns, and his name's Jared Anderson. He's an amazing audio engineer in Nashville. One day he had me sit in the studio with him while he was mixing, and I knew nothing about. There's a big program called Pro Tools that audio engineers have to know. You have to know it. It's industry standard. You have to be quick at it. You need to know shortcuts, all these things. I knew zero about any of that. I felt so behind. I was scared to come back to school because I didn't know anything about it. And he had me in the studio for a session and sat with me for so long. I got to ask him any question I wanted. And I was so scared to ask any questions in school ever because I would always get comments, oh, you don't know that? You're an idiot. But here he was like, oh yeah, this is that. This is how you do that. This is how you do this. No problem. This is how you do that. And it was so impactful to me. I don't think he knows how much it helped me feel confident. And the other engineers there too, they let me ask them anything I wanted, anytime. Nothing was stupid. I wasn't stupid. And that was the biggest thing I needed to learn was I'm not stupid. I know how to do this. And by the time I came back to school, I was like, nobody's messing with me anymore. I know what I'm doing. And I worked at a hard recording studio, an actual famous country recording studio. So I knew what it was like in the real world to be in an environment like that and an actual real professional environment. So by the time I got back to school, I was so different and I didn't take their crap anymore because I learned so much. I was the only one who left the state to go to an internship that year. And so I came back knowing so many more things.
Well, and I think that's a really good example of perspective because the first 2-3 years, you didn't know anything, right? So you felt insecure. And so when these people would say something to you, it already played into that narrative of well, I'm less than, I don't deserve it this much, or whatever it was. Whereas once you felt oh, I worked at this professional place and this big time thing, I had this real experience, now I'm confident in it. And so when they said those same exact comments, they weren't able to affect you in the same way because you knew that they weren't true.
Yeah, exactly. And I learned real life things too. The computer stuff I needed to know, the setting up sessions I needed to know. And I needed to know those so bad in the moment while I was there in the studio that when I came back to school at our little cutie little recording studio we had there, I was like, this is so easy. This is amazing. I know everything now. Obviously, I didn't know everything, but I felt like I could handle anything. I was like, give me anything. I know how to do it. And I did not feel that way before. It was time that I needed in order to find myself and become confident in what I was doing. I wasn't fully confident, but I definitely changed so much during those months.
So then you go through your senior year, then you graduate. Then how do you get into the real world?
By the time my senior year rolled around, I was praying about where I needed to go. And I felt LA was where I needed. What's crazy about that is I've never been interested in LA ever my entire life. Never even thought about it. And then as I was praying, God kept saying, you need to go to Los Angeles to prepare for me to move to LA. I pretend like I lived in LA when I lived in Missouri. And I would advertise to people who live in Los Angeles. I would book photo shoots in LA, charge enough that it would pay for a plane ticket. And I would fly out there, do the photo shoot, and then fly back home. And I did that for an entire year. And so I set up this whole client base of photography clients before I even moved. And then by the time I moved, I had regular clients that were paying my bills.
When did you start photography?
I started photography in high school.
And so all through college, you were doing it on the side of going to school.
Mm-hmm.
And were you making money through it in college?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was always like how you had extra money.
Yes. I didn't move to LA until a year after I graduated. I didn't know how to get in to the music industry at all. I had no idea what I was going to do. And I knew I needed to build something there before I go, because I wanted to create a big safety net for me when I moved to LA. And so I knew that this was the way to do that. So that by the time I moved, these people, I worked with a lot of bloggers, a lot of influencers, a lot of business owners who needed regular content all the time. So I used to have packages where you could pay me monthly to do 3 weeks worth of content, stuff like that, like all these crazy different things.
It's now been a year. Mm-hmm. You move out to California. And was it what you were expecting? How did you start doing music here?
It was not what I expected. I don't think it ever will be. I was hoping maybe I'll figure out how to get into the industry. And I was too busy doing photo shoots because I was trying to pay my rent. It's this really bad cycle that a lot of people who live here get into. The guy I was dating at the time, he had connections in the music industry. His family had connections in the music industry. And it wasn't a very good relationship. It was a relationship that I knew was not right, and God was telling me to leave, and I just couldn't leave it. And I felt like I would lose everything if I left the relationship, because I was being promised things like, we can get you into this super crazy studio and you can intern there and you can do this. He worked for this big time producer, and he was very personally working with him. And my boyfriend at the time was saying, don't worry, it'll be fine. Like, we'll get you in somewhere. So I was relying on that. I thought that was my only way in. And they always tell you, oh, it's about who you know. So I was really concerned, I don't know anyone here. What am I going to do? Eventually, that relationship I had to leave. God was being so persistent on me. It was nonstop in my head. You have to leave this relationship. You have to leave it. And so I finally did. And it was extremely difficult. I lost everything. I lost all the friends I had because they were all of his friends. I lost job opportunity. I lost everything pretty much. And I was super lonely. I was living in a studio apartment by myself and had nowhere to go. And eventually I remembered Sound Girls. I posted in the private group saying, hey, is anyone willing to take on a mentorship type of thing? And I explained I didn't really want to do another internship because I unfortunately didn't have the time to do an internship. When you do an internship, you have to commit. I mean, your whole week is gone, and I wouldn't have been able to pay for my rent. So I was like, unfortunately, I can't do an internship. Is anyone interested in taking on someone who can just hang out in the studio and watch them? And the founder of the group, Carrie Keys, she tagged all of these powerhouse women in the audio industry, like who are doing incredible things in the music industry, amazing women. And one of the women she tagged messaged me and told me, hey, don't know what your schedule is. Do you want to come to my place tomorrow at 3 p.m.? I had no idea who this girl was. I was like, this would be sketchy in any other situation, but because she tagged you, I'm going to just trust that you're not weird. And I showed up to her house the next day and sat with her, talked about audio, stayed quiet for a long time and just watched her mix because she's the most incredible mixer. Her name's Allie McGuire. She's so amazing. And I started coming to her house probably 3-4 times a week for a few hours, and then it grew to more than that. And eventually one day she was working on a mix and she turned around and asked me, hey, this song feels like it's missing something. What do you think? In the music world, when you're in my position, you do not say anything. You're not allowed to say anything. It's very inappropriate. So when she turned around and asked me, I was like, oh my gosh. So I told her what I thought, and she used my suggestions and she really liked them. And she told me, man, I should tell my boss about you. 3 days later, I get an email from her boss. He owns Melrose Sound Studios. He told me, hey, heard what Allie said about you. Come into the studio for an interview. Come into the studio the next day, bring my resume. I'm super nervous, all this stuff. And he asks me just one question. He says, what's your 5-year goal? And I told him what I wanted. And he said, okay, when can you start? And then that's how it all happened. And it's all by happenstance, like this complicated web of things. It was awesome. I worked at a studio that has huge clients that are people that everyone has heard of, that come in all the time. Amazing music was being made there. I've seen history go down with music there. Some of the most viral songs I heard being recorded there. And it's super amazing. And I met the most incredible people there. Eventually I took on a management position at the studio, and I was on call 24/7. Anytime I could answer my phone, I need to answer it, which is normally how it goes. And I was also doing weddings, and so it was a lot. I was in that position for 2.5 years, and it got to the point where I was not really growing anymore. I was just showing up, and my boss could tell. He could definitely tell that I was just kind of showing up and doing the job. I felt like I needed to go on a retreat where I fasted and prayed. And I went with my bandmate to Joshua Tree, and I rented an Airbnb, and we fasted for 3 days and just drank water and prayed and made music. And I prayed about my future because to me, I took on the recording studio job as my identity. I took that on and I thought, oh, if I quit, I'm an idiot. What am I going to do? I'm not even close to being in the music industry then. And I started praying and praying, and I felt like God was telling me to leave in the summer. And this was back in February.
So like a year ago.
Yeah, like a year ago, I got a word from God that I needed to quit in June, like the first week of June. And I'm like, first week of June, that seems random. Why? My bandmate and I started making so much music, and I realized what I really wanted to do. And that's not manage a recording studio. It's not even be an audio engineer. I want to be creating something either for people or with people that impacts others. And for me, audio engineering is a part of that. And that's why I had to go through the schooling. That's why I had to learn all of that. But producing music, writing a song, being with someone in a room like this and talking about your life and then making music from that, that is what is going to fill me up and I feel so energized by that. And it feels like this excitement that God's in the room with me. I feel it literally flows out of me. Whenever I do a session and I just feel God all over it, then the same day I won't shut up. I'm like preaching over people. I'm saying things, and I realize, wow, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. We didn't have enough time to do music because of all the work I was doing at the studio. And there's another girl there who's wonderful. She was like me, before when I started there. And so I was kind of grooming her to be the next manager there. And it was what she always wanted to do. And so it was perfect timing in June because she was like, I'm ready to do this on my own. And I was like, I literally just felt like I needed to leave right now. And so it was beautiful too, the ending. I mean, I came to my boss to talk to him, and the first thing he said to me was, so are you staying or are you leaving? With a smile on his face. And I told him, I'm leaving. And we talked about it, and he told me how proud he was of me, and he saw me doing my music, and just that I'm gonna be fine.
Rewind a little bit, because so you start working at the studio, and then at what point do you start producing your own music with your bandmate?
So 2018, I started working at the studio, and then my bandmate and I, we were kind of just acquaintances. We chatted every once in a while. I always ran into him at his house because all of his housemates are my really good friends. And then eventually, you know, we started having deeper talks and still weren't doing music, but I knew he was interested in music. But at the time, I was way too busy to offer to collab or do anything with him. A whole year goes by, the pandemic starts, and he's really close to me now at this point. I mean, we aren't best friends, but he's like coming over to my house every once in a while. He's part of my friend group, and he comes over to my house. I think he was over there because we have these beautiful white walls, and he wanted to photograph some product that he made. And this is when we were on lockdown. So I was downstairs and I said, hey, do you still do music? And he said, yeah, I still do music. Are you still doing music? And I said, yeah. And I told him we should do a collab sometime because I have nothing to do and no work, no studio, nothing. And he was like, yes.
As the world starts to reopen, you go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still produce music with him, or does that kind of stop?
During the pandemic, we were kind of producing twice a week-ish. And then the more I got back in the studio, we kind of were only doing it once a week or so, and it wasn't super consistent. And one day, him and I came up with something where I thought, this is pretty good. We should do something with this. So then after that, I realized I really want to start producing more music. Our mutual friend Christina, she offered to take pictures of us. And we thought, is this turning into something? Should we become a band? I don't really know. And we decided to become a band. And we thought, we'll just see where it takes us. And we started doing music all the time, as much as we could. We became super close because when you're doing music with someone else, especially just one partner, you have to show them your soul, because it sounds cheesy, but it's really true. If you write a song, it's coming from your heart. Just like if you write in your journal, it's like writing in your journal, but telling someone what your journal says, which is freaky. And you're trusting this person to accept you no matter what's going on in your life and no matter what you're writing about. And we did that, and it made us so close to where we had so much fun together and enjoyed making music. And the more and more we were doing that, the more I was learning about creating my own music. And I thought I was horrible at writing songs, but turns out I'm not horrible at writing songs. I'm just good at writing hooks, not verses. That's more specific, and it's more encouraging because it's okay that I'm not very good at that. I just realized my power and what I felt was the most right for me.
I think the main thing, especially when you do have the blessing of working with someone else, you don't really both need to be good at the same thing. You need to have strengths, and your weaknesses the other person needs to be strong in, because then you're completing the package.
We were so opposite of each other in every way possible. Every way besides obviously our very strong connections to God.
Well, and having the same goal.
yes, and we had the same goal and we had the same future life in mind, which I think is really important because it shows someone how seriously you're taking whatever you're doing with them. And even being in a partnership, you know, we had to be super realistic. Even the relationship of, oh, I'm a girl, he's a guy. We need boundaries because things can get sketchy between a guy and a girl working together every single day on music, stuff that's very vulnerable and full of feelings. And so you have to throw everything out there. That was interesting to navigate.
When do you go from just bandmates to start dating him?
A year goes by. Yeah, a whole year, because we didn't start dating until April 25th of the year 2021.
It's a full year.
Yeah, full year goes by. Eventually, we started just hanging out, not even just doing music. We were just spending our free time together. We kept hanging out. We kept having these amazing conversations about God and life and just really deep, incredible things. And yeah, then April, we realized we both had feelings for each other, and that was really actually hard. It wasn't magical and really easy because it was a risk to our band and the music we were making, and it was a risk to our friendship. We were such good friends. We were best friends, and we really treated each other like that. And it was a beautiful friendship with respect and honor and boundaries and just fun, super fun. And so we had to pray a lot about it. Then we started dating April 25th.
And then June comes, you quit your job. Now you have a lot more time to make music. Because before you were talking about like, this is what you're meant to do. How do you feel now that you're like living in what you feel like is your purpose?
It feels really good. The thing that I'm not doing this time that I did last time is, this is something I'm actively learning all the time. But when I got the job at the studio, I thought, this is the end of the rainbow. I did it. What God wanted me to do, I'm in it. But that actually wasn't the end at all. I had no idea I would be here right now. So this time around, I'm not thinking, yes, God, this is the end of the rainbow. It's not yet. I know that there's more that I'm going to be doing, but I'm trying to take it as I'm enjoying it so much, because after I quit the studio, I felt like 1,000 pounds lift off my back.
Yeah.
It felt so freeing, and it felt so covered in God and peace everywhere. It was just overwhelming to me. It took me so long to where I didn't feel like I wanted to smile so much, because I felt like I made the right choice, that peace choice, where God makes it obvious that you have that one decision and then the other decision, and this was the right one to choose. And it felt so good that now I feel like I'm in my element. I feel a little scared because music is tough to do, and it's tough to know how to put yourself out there without a team helping you. The thing about LA too is no one wants to be on your team unless you're already winning. And so if you're small and you don't have a huge following, you have some songs out, kind of where we're at right now. We have people that love our stuff, but we don't have the biggest following at the moment because we just started and we only have a few songs out, and that's fine with me. But no one's going to come up to you and say, I'll be your marketing person for free until you make money, because they want to guarantee that you're going to make them some money, which is that's how record labels work too. So it's an interesting thing doing everything yourself, but I'm so thankful that I have a partner who's doing this with me. It's super tiring and exhausting and hard, but it's so rewarding. All of the moments that we've had together, all of the music we've discovered, the creating, the singing, crying while singing, just all the things that come along with doing music and all the people we've met because of it it's been very humbling, and it's been really good. And yeah, it just feels right. So I'm not afraid in that aspect of God's not blessing it.
What would you say to like your younger self, like your college self, not believing in yourself, that person?
I would tell her, don't put your identity into this. This is not who you are. This is just something you want to do that God's telling you to do. I would tell her, don't worry about any of those guys because they're not going to be around at all in your future. There's going to be a whole lot of people who respect you and love you and think you're awesome at music. And I would tell her to stop dating that guy. But sooner rather than later.
If you are doing something different, people are going to have something to say about it because it's different and they don't like know what to expect. It makes them uncomfortable. And I think it's like such a good point to say, like, don't let those people tell you you're like less than or like poop on your idea because they're uncomfortable by it, because realistically, like, they're not going to matter. They're in your life for that season and you get to pick who stays in your life. And so eventually they're not going to be in your life anymore. And even it's like sad to think about, but like even the people who are really close to you are not always going to be in your life depending on who they are. And so just to like take that with a grain of salt and say, okay, like, I respect people and like I, value other people's opinion, but not letting that dictate your like path and what you want for yourself, because you're going to find the right people who support you and love you and like your ideas. And realistically, that's the only people who should matter anyways, like the people who genuinely care about you, because those people in school, like after you left class, they didn't think about you or like care about you. Yeah. So you should really only care about the people who like genuinely care about your well-being and want the right things for you.
Yeah. I remember being in class and they asked all of us what we wanted to do in the future as a job. And I said, I was one of the only people who said, I want to work in a recording studio and be an engineer. And my teacher told me, you'll never get that job. That job doesn't even exist nowadays. He's an old school guy, so he definitely thinks it doesn't exist, which it does. And everyone like kind of laughed at me. And turns out I'm one of 2 people that moved to LA and are working in music from my school out of all of us. And I decided to do that. And I didn't care that people were laughing at me because I was like, well, that's what God told me to do, so I know it's out there. Even if everyone says that it's not. So
can you talk about like trusting in God even when it's scary, like how you have the courage to do that?
This is really tough because a lot of people, they want to trust in God, and it's really hard for people to release their worries and doubts and give it to God. And I'm not perfect at it. It's constant. That's the thing that I think people miss, is it's every day. You need to give yourself to God every day. I remember meeting this girl. She always said, you need to die to yourself. And I was wondering, what does die to yourself even really mean? And you need to do it every day. Dying to yourself is giving away everything you care about and putting it into God's hands, because that's how you trust. And the only way to do that is to read the Bible, which sounds so annoying, but it's so true. There are so many answers in there. I've found so many answers to things I needed to decide in the Bible.
When you're in school and you have like a test, when you like take online tests and then you could go to a different website and type in the equation and then it would give you the answer and you just like get an A on your test. Or you could like sit there and like do all the work and try to figure out the answer, but like it doesn't really make sense and you may or may not get it right. I honestly feel like it's like the same, it's like a cheat code almost, where it's like it's not perfect in terms of like sometimes you have to like dig a little bit and like it's not just like straight on your face. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But there's so many answers in there where it's like, if you have a question, look at that. And like most of the time you're going to find the answer you're looking for.
when you're reading the Bible too, you're more susceptible to the Lord and how he's working in your life. So even if you're not getting the answer from the Bible, he knows that you're listening. And you reading the Bible, he knows that you're searching for him, you're looking for him, and you're more open to hearing what he has to say.
I'm just going to use your relationship as an example, but like, because you were saying die to self and give God everything that is important to you. Like, how do you say, okay, I like, this is the most important thing in my life, or your music or whatever it is, like, and I'm just going to give it to you and just trust that you're like, what does that process look like to you? Like, you're just like, okay, if I lose it, okay. Like, how do you?
Yeah. I mean, I literally will say that if this isn't for me, God, then yeah, I'll literally say, okay, if it's not for me, then okay. But I always say to him, man, God, if this isn't for me, if music isn't what I'm supposed to be doing, it's going to hurt really bad, but please just let me know why, eventually give me the answer to why I wasn't supposed to be doing that, And he does not give the answers right away because trust me, I've waited on some stuff for a while, and then I finally have now just learned why that was not supposed to be what it was.
What he has in store for you tomorrow is going to be better than what he had yesterday. So even if you feel like today, like you have the best thing, all your dreams came true, it's like, it doesn't matter how old you are. You could be 16 or you could be 66. Like, he has you on earth for a reason, and like for tomorrow. Like, it's not like, as you were saying, like, it's not like, oh, okay, end all be all, like my dream happened and I'm done. Like, what he has in store for you is better. So like, when you first got your recording job, it's like, this is my dream, I got it. And then there was something else. It's like, oh, now it's music. And even like, we set goals, and the service I was listening to was just talking about like, we strive for like these goals, but it's really about the journey. And so like, to say like, okay, well, I have everything I want and this is amazing, but to know that if God were to take it away, he has something better in store for you. And I think that's like what helps me in just trusting him and like saying every day, okay, I'm going to die to myself because I tried my way for a really long time and it didn't work. So like, you created me, you created my existence, like you created the world I live in. You probably know a little bit more than I do. Yeah. And I know that like, to the ends of the earth, like, you want what's best for me, so more than I want for myself. So like, okay, here you go.
For me, I think if I don't know the right answer yet, then I'm being prepared. I don't know what I'm being prepared for at all, and I feel annoyed because I don't have my answer yet, and I feel pressure. There's a deadline or a timeline of something, but all I know is that is preparation time. I heard in a sermon once, he said, he brought up the story of Joseph and how he was in jail for so many years. He was in jail for so long. And people were getting out of jail. He was interpreting people's dreams. And the pastor said, you can be like Joseph, where you can say, this sucks, God, but I'm with you. And I love that line because it's true. You can tell God, this sucks really bad. I feel scared. I feel nervous. I feel anxiety. I'm not sleeping. God, when are you going to help me? And you just need to keep saying, but I am with you. I think it's really important to remember that because obviously it's not time yet for whatever you're supposed to be doing and whatever you want. He knows that it's not time yet.
I think it's really interesting because you said deadlines, and I've been in a lot of situations, I think most people have, where it's like, I need to make this choice and my lease is going to end, or I have to say yes or no to this job, and like, if I wait, literally the opportunity is going to be gone. And so we have this pressure of like time, right? But to remember that God doesn't work in our constraints. Like, we are in time and space, but God is beyond time and space. And I think that God has a sense of humor because he really likes to like make you wait till the last possible second. Yeah. Like, and I think that's like for him to be like, well, do you trust me? Because I went to a service last night actually, and I was getting like all these downloads about like how you are when things are hard is like a much bigger reflection of who you are rather than when things are easy. Because if you are making a decision about 5 years from now, or like you have like, oh, what am I going to do at the end of my lease that's in like 6 months? And he gives you the answer, that's like, you don't really have to trust him for much. But if it's like the day before, it's like, okay, yeah, like, what are you going to do? And he won't like let you fall on your face. He'll always like use whatever it is. If you end up walking into a situation that you weren't prepared for, like he has intention behind that.
Totally.
Lately, I've been struggling with like time and making time for it. It's like, oh, I have work and I have to do the podcast and I have to do all these things. And it's like, if you if you had all the time in the world and you were giving it to me, that's like easy for you. But if you have no time and you find time for me and like you go above and beyond to like prioritize me, that's like a lot more effort than just like sitting around empty doing it.
Say you're in a romantic relationship. If your boyfriend or whoever it is doesn't make time for you and they just see you whenever it's convenient for them, how are you going to feel? You don't feel very important or special or loved. You feel like a convenience.
To the point of he makes us wait till like the very last second. When I was in the season of waiting, I was like, okay, like I want an answer. I want an answer right now. Why can't he not just tell me? And it's really interesting because if you know everything too soon, it's like if you knew how you were going to die, you wouldn't do a lot of things in your life. And so I had learned that God will only show you. He actually gave me like this image of a pathway and it being like pitch black and then like a light turning on. It's like pretty well-known image, but I just like got such a clear visual of it. And one light lighting your feet so you can take the next step. But like literally not even enough like of the glow to see what's ahead of it. Is like just where your foot's going to be placed. Mm-hmm. And I remember going through this season like, okay, like, well, I'm such a planner and I'm such a control freak and I want to know the future. And I was like, I'm sitting here and I want to be obedient and you tell me what's next. And he was like, if I tell you the end of the book, you're not going to read the book. Like, you're not going to go through it, what I want you to do. And something they were talking about last night was how, you know, it's really not about the outcome. It's really about the journey. And so our society and like us as humans, we were like, we want the outcome and we just want to get to the end and we forget about the journey. We forget about now. And this pastor had made a good point and he was like, we're always living for what's next. And it's like, well, I want to graduate high school and I want to graduate college and I want to meet, you know, have a relationship and I want to get married and I want to have kids and I want to buy a house. And it just always goes. And even when we get that one thing we want, it's on to the next. Mm-hmm. And then we forget about like our singleness, right? Like right now I'm single and it's like, well, I want a husband. And I've talked about that before. And it's like, well, no, there's like a reason to being single and like enjoying that. And I think it's so interesting because in that season is like when he's using you and like developing you into the person you will be, and like the person he wants you like to grow into. And so by lighting like just that like one step ahead of you, if you don't know like where the path is leading, you really have to say, okay, like you're my only light source. I don't know where the path is. Like, tell me where to go. And it's all on him. And that's like kind of the position he wants you in, because when we know, it's like, oh, well, I got this. I don't need God. And we become like, we know too much. It's like with a kid, it's like if you try to teach a child like how to read when they're 1, it's like they're not going to get it and they're not going to understand what the book even says. Like there's no purpose in doing that. So we teach a baby how to, you know, eat and like sit up before they walk, and there's a whole purpose. And as adults, we know so much more than the 1-year-old, so we're going to teach them accordingly. And he has the same, like he's teaching us accordingly, even though we think it's like a 13-year-old. We're like, I know everything. It's like, actually you don't, but at the time you feel like you do. And then your parents like, you don't know anything that you're talking about. And it's this like we need to be that humble as like, okay, he knows so much more than us, even though we feel like we know it all.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest keys to life is exactly or what you were talking about, how you can only see what's in front of you. Well, why would you ever compare yourself to a person next to you when they can only see what's right in front of them? They might be going on a completely different trajectory than you. Even when it comes to my music, I see other people going way faster than I am. I can't look at other people. The best thing I can do is support others in where they're at, no matter if they're behind me, in front of me, above me, wherever, because no one technically is behind or in front of you.
Like, as humans, we make it linear. It's like, oh, well, we're farther. And I heard something else last night that they were saying, like, it could be the exact right thing, but if it's on at the wrong timing, then it's like the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. And so we always like make justifications for things, and we're like, well, I could get ahead, or I could do this, like, and we make it okay. And it's like, no, it doesn't matter if it's literally the perfect guy or the perfect job. If it's not the right time, if it's not exactly how God intended it, then it won't get you to where you want to be. It makes me think of like GPS. And you're like, oh, here's a shortcut. Like, I'm going to skip the traffic. Mm-hmm. And then you like turn and you like go on this other way. And then you think it's going to like get you there faster. And then it ends up taking you like double the amount of time because you make all the wrong turns. Mm-hmm. Or like you hit a construction zone or like something stupid. And it's like, I don't know, just to think that God has like put you on this path and lit up your feet in this direction intentionally. And so to like try to go on your own path, you can do that, but most likely like you'll end up back on the same road. And it's just gonna be a detour. This past week I was offered like a job, and I went and I like met with the people, and I got home, I was like, I feel like such a sellout. Like, well, here's a way that I can make money, right? And here's where all my time's gonna go, and I know if I trade my time for this money, like I'll be in a better financial situation. And I'm like, I intentionally set up my schedule to prioritize this business because this is what God told me to do. And this week I was like humbly reminded that the reason for doing this was purely as an act of obedience to God. And so I went to this job, and I was like it's will give me these like things that I think I want. Like, it will make paying my bills easier, and it will do all, be a lot more secure than like trusting the podcast is going to work out and like provide for me. But like, I'm just like not believing in myself, and I'm like believing what the world's telling me to do. And like, I'm selling myself short, and it could look like the right thing in a lot of areas, but I know that that's not what God wants for me. So I'm going to like take the harder route and stay true to like, because I know that that reward, although it may take like a lot longer and it'd be a lot harder, will be such a greater reward than to just like sell out and do the easy thing.
I could easily just fill my time with wedding photography. Instead, I feel God is telling me to do this music thing. And so if I have to be frugal with finances, if I have to believe that things are going to work out with it, even though it feels super scary, then I'm just going to do that because that's what he's always told me to do. And every time I've done that, it's been worth it completely. I feel in my life, I've always had to have a lot of faith. My family's been in tough situations and situations that I had no control over, that I had to have major faith in because I didn't know what I was going to do. And during college too, sticking to my guns and staying through college, that really helped me build a practice for perseverance, continuing what God's telling you to do, no matter how hard or horrible it is. And it's not like God is trying to torture you or anything, but there's a reason for all of it. And again, all of those answers, my time in college, why it was so hard, I now know why it was so hard. Yeah. And those answers have come to me over the last years. And I am so thankful that I had a tough time in college, because I would not be as assertive and confident as I am today if I didn't go through that. And that's something that I realize faith is practice, because you can't just decide you want to have faith. You can, that's great. But after that, what are you going to do the next day? You're going to not have faith again because you're scared? No, you need to say, okay, God, I'm feeling really scared, but I have faith. You always need to add that last part in, because God God loves you as a father. It says it all the time. So he's going to take you in. If you're scared, he's going to be like, oh, it's going to be okay. But you need to trust him that it's going to be okay.
Right.
And that's the problem with a lot of people, is they just think, I think God's telling me it's going to be okay, but I'm so really scared. I don't trust that.
We base him off of what we know. So we know the limitations that society has trained us for us to believe our whole life. And even things like with healing, right? It's like, well, we know and we trust in medicine because we've seen it work. Well, there's a lot of people out there who believe and trust in God because they've seen him heal. But if you've never seen that work, then it's like literally believing in something that you haven't seen. And I think the more you know and see God's goodness like work in your life, the easier it is to trust.
Totally.
And it's like, it's the same thing with like practice of like, if you want to have like strong faith, it's something it's like kind of a learned skill, actually. It's like most people are not just born. Some people are, but I'd say 95% of people are not just born having faith. It goes against everything that you're taught. So to say, okay, I'm going to believe in something that I cannot see, and that's the whole point of faith, right? Is believing what you can't see yet, but knowing like God is who he said he is. And like the more you see him do it, like it's like, okay, well, he did it once, he's going to do it again. And it's kind of like even like with your parents, where it's like, okay, I know my parents gave me this rule or whatever for a reason. I'm going to believe that this new rule that they're giving me or this new thing they're saying is for my well-being. And like, the more you know about their character and the better relationship you have, it's a lot easier.
I've always gone through trusting God, making a decision, and then it ended up being the right one.
I was the opposite. Like, I was like, I got this. I know what I want for my life. I'm a go-getter. I'm going to go out and I'm going to make it happen. God doesn't do anything. Like, he's not going to help me. Like, he's a man in the sky. I don't know. And so I did all these things and I ran after it and like literally saw no success in anything. And not just like in career wise, but like in relationships and friendships and all these things. When I first even gave God something like small was like the first time where I'm like, oh. And I really only did it because I was like, well, I see the fruit of other people, so like maybe I should try it. Like, I've tried everything else and I keep hitting the wall and I keep hitting the wall and I keep hitting the wall. Like, might as well try this. And then the door opened and I'm like, oh, okay. The only way you're ever going to know is by giving him something. Yeah. And he definitely will not work in the way that you think he will.
I also think it takes practice in trusting God and trusting that you are hearing him. So I think he starts with little things. I have this example of, she's kind of an old mentor of mine, but she was talking about practicing hearing the Holy Spirit and hearing God's voice. And that's the biggest question, isn't it? Everyone is like, how do you hear God's voice? How can I hear it? What is he telling me? And my mentor, she was saying she was trying to practice hearing God's voice. And she was trying to be susceptible to it. She didn't know what she was listening for. She didn't know anything. And randomly, she was just about to go out to eat, whatever, with some of her friends, and she felt this little weird inkling to bring crayons. And she was like, why am I bringing crayons to a nice restaurant? This is weird. So she puts the crayons in her purse and she's like, I don't know, whatever. Doesn't think that it's God or anything. She wasn't like, oh, that's God. Yeah. She just was like, that's random. So she goes to the restaurant and probably like 30 minutes into her dinner, there's a kid screaming so loud on the other side of the restaurant. And she overheard the table and the kid, they were like, do you have anything? Crayons, markers, anything? And immediately that's when it clicked for her and she knew, oh my gosh. And she came up to that table and she said, hey, I have crayons in my purse. Here you go. And it worked and the kid was fine. And she said, oh my gosh, I think that was the Holy Spirit talking to me. And She told me that years and years and years ago. Like, this is probably more than 10 years ago that she told me this. But I remember it because I think of that all the time, because you don't level up at all. I think humans want to think that they level up with God in their relationship, but you never level up. You just always have to be practicing so that you're more vulnerable to hearing him. He's always at the same level because he's the same. It's just you're the one who's hindering yourself if you're doing something, or you're not listening, or you're taking control over something you're not supposed to. And for me, I can always feel myself saying, oh no, I feel like I'm not being susceptible to God. God, I want to hear you. And so if I think of little things, maybe it's not God, but a lot of the time it is. And then when I get it right, and I know that was the Holy Spirit talking to me when I was supposed to do something, I feel so good. And then I feel like, okay, God, what's next? I'm so excited. What do you have for me? And it helps me recognize. And I think a lot of people don't want to recognize the little things.
With the big stuff, I think it really is, God wants to also be able to trust you. If you're acting like God's a vending machine, then he's not going to trust that you're going to steward what he gives you well. So if you're like, okay, God, I want to win the lottery, he's not just going to like grant, he's not a genie, like he doesn't just grant your wish. But when you are, even going back to what I said before, where it's like when you're like giving him money, or like, when you don't have a lot of money, or you're giving him time when you don't have a lot of time, or whatever it is, like how you are when you don't have a lot of whatever it is, to then, if he sees like how you're like being obedient to that and like stewarding it well, and then it's like, okay, I'm gonna trust you more, even with whether it's like gifts, like prophecy or speaking in tongues, or like whatever it is. It's like he knows you're seeking him. He knows like you are dying to yourself. He knows you're being obedient, and he's gonna, okay, I'm gonna give you more. Whereas like if you're just taking what he gives you and then using it for like selfish things, and like you're self-serving, why would he like give you more of it? And I also think that in trusting him and like doing it every single day, saying, okay, I'm going to die to myself, I'm going to give it to you, when we don't, like when he's not working in our time frame, or he's not like giving us the path that we envision for ourselves, or that we want, like we can grow very weary, because it's work, like it's energy and effort that you have to put into like not just doing the easy thing and like really giving it to him. And so to say like, God, I need help, like I need you to help, like give me energy to like keep going, to keep knocking on the doors.
And should you keep going, check in with God, right, asking him, hey, should we keep going with this? Yeah. I even do that in my romantic relationship. We literally pray, hey, God, how's our relationship going to you? Should we keep continuing our relationship? It's scary to do that, because what if he says no? Yeah. Oh my gosh. But if he does, then thank goodness.
Even to that point, it's like, well, I love my relationship. I don't want to ask him this. But if he has something bigger planned for you, then wouldn't you like rather know as soon as it's over, instead of like dragging it out and like, well, he said it's not right, but we're going to keep working at it. And then like 6 months, a year, multiple years go by, and you're like, oh, it didn't work out, because he's going to know long before you know. Oh, yeah. So like by checking and say, okay, is this right? Even if you don't like his answer, and honestly, like a lot of the time you may not like his answer, but, and we've talked about this, but just like then years later you realize like, oh, thank God I didn't stay with that guy. Like you said, like I would have told my younger self, break up with the guy sooner. It's like at the time it was hard, but later on in life you look back and like, I should have done that a year sooner. I should have done this when God told me to, or how God told me to, because it would have saved me so much.
Yeah. Something I think about a lot, and my mom says this a lot too to me, is if God is trying to get you to learn something, he will keep bringing you back around the mountain again and again and again and again until you finally understand it and it stays with you, because it's so easy. I think especially in relationships, it's really easy to fall back into this habitual lifestyle that you have. And for you to get out of that, that's really scary and new, and you think it's impossible. And you'll just keep doing it, the same thing, even with little things like not giving God something or not having faith in something. He's not going to keep tearing you down. That's not what he's doing. He's just keeping you going on the path until you release to him what it is. And that's the thing that people always say is, oh, my life just keeps going this way. I don't understand. Maybe it's because you need to learn something that you don't realize yet. And that's such an annoyingly vague answer, but I think it's really true.
It is true.
And you have to kind of think outside of the box and really look into yourself and think, okay, what do I need to learn? Or what is my issue that I'm having to why my life keeps going like this? Because God changes people's lives immediately all the time. And he still has you. He's still holding you, but you're the one keeping yourself down here. And so he's just going to hold you down here. And then when you decide to go up, then he's going to be like, all right, now I'll hold you up here. Great.
What is the like biggest thing, like now when you look back at like your life, like what is the biggest thing you've learned, like takeaway?
The biggest thing I've learned is to always run back to God. No matter what horrible situation you're in, even if you don't feel worthy enough to go back, he is always waiting for you. And that really comforted me all through that time. And I still say that to myself. And just, he needs to be the foundation no matter where you are, even if the foundation's kind of rocky and it's because you made it rocky, it's still okay.
I had this image of like rocks and then him coming with like the grout and like gluing it all together and like making it stable. Okay, and then what would you tell someone who has big dreams, feels like they're swimming upstream, like against what society is telling her? What would you tell that person?
I would tell them to make sure that what you're doing is what God is wanting you to do. And if you're not sure, keep going hard, because if you're not getting a word of anything, keep going on your journey and do not stop it unless God clearly tells you to stop, because there's a lot of waiting. There's a huge waiting period. There's a lot of not knowing. There's a lot of waiting for God to make a move in your life. And if you're trying to achieve something and it feels big, but it feels peaceful, do it. And even if people say that you can't do that, or that sounds kind of impossible, or your parents are saying you can't afford to become that person, it's okay, because you can still love them and keep trying to do what you're going to do. And God is eventually going to open doors for you and to do that. But it's not going to be fast. It might be fast, who knows? But most of the time, it's not going to be quick, and it's not going to be just a walk in the park. It just feels like, what are you doing? But God knows what you're doing and why you're doing it. You just don't know. So it's just really hard for our brains, our human brains, to comprehend and understand.
We cannot possibly comprehend God's complexity.
We cannot wrap our minds around. We think we can, but we can't. Mm-hmm. We still can't. And people just limit God to what they know, and he's so much more than that. People always complain that they're not getting anywhere, but God gave us trees, right? He gave us trees, and we're the ones who are supposed to make the tables and chairs. But we're sitting here complaining, we have nowhere to sit and nowhere to eat. And then God's saying, well, what the heck? I left you trees. They're right there. Yeah. Make the tables and chairs with them. That's why I gave you them. I think about that 24/7. And so think about that next time you feel stuck somewhere. Think about, am I making tables and chairs? Did he give me trees?
Well, and to know that like one way or another, eventually the answer will come, and like the doors will either be like open or they'll be shut.
Yeah.
And like a prayer that I like often pray when I don't know if it's whatever the decision is, like if I am uncertain about what decision to make or if something's from God, I'll pray like, God, please shut the door if it's not for me. Take it away. Like if this is not what you want, take it away, because sometimes he doesn't give us what we want when we want it, but I do think that if it's not for us and like it's not what he wants for us, he's usually pretty good about taking things away.
Totally. He will slam that door in your face, and he'll slam it in your face. And even if you don't accept the no, he'll still make sure that you know it's a no. So that's why I feel for people who I say, just keep going, because if you feel like I'm lost in my life, I believe God is telling me, but nothing's happening. Well, then it's not a no. Just keep going.
Well, and it almost like made me think of like a hallway with a bunch of doors in it, and you may like pray like, okay, God, like where am I supposed to go? And he sometimes may open like a door and show you like all the other doors are shut, come this way. But then a lot of the time all the doors will stay shut and you're like, okay, I'm waiting, like which one? And so it's like kind of on us to like go knocking on the doors, and like this one didn't open, okay, this one didn't open. And like when I was talking about like growing weary, it's like he wants us to like build the tables and chairs. Like he wants us to like try. It's not just like sitting back waiting for him. So it's like, okay, eventually he will open one of those doors. And it's like when it's like, okay, God, none of these doors are opening, it's like praying, saying, okay, God, like I'm growing weary. Give me the strength to keep like trying in this waiting period until you are ready to give like me whatever path and blessing that you are have in store.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point of you need to knock on the doors to see, because certain doors are going to clearly be wrong. Other doors are going to look kind of right, but they might not be right. And those are great for you to try and see. And then once you're there, it's going to either feel kind of wrong or it's not going to be very appealing anymore. And you're going to know, oh, I don't think I'm supposed to go that way.
I have to say that one of the best feelings is when you're like, oh, like that makes sense. And it's like literally a puzzle that just like clicks. And you're like, I finally understand why I went through hell for however long. And like, I get it now.
Yeah, it's so nice. And I think people compare each other, they compare themselves with the other person, and they say, oh, why is that person getting answers so much faster than me? What's wrong with me? Why can't I hear God?
I also noticed that, and this is not a end all be all, because there's a lot of people who have faith and are blessed like quicker than others, but I also noticed that a lot of the time I'll compare my situation with someone who isn't necessarily being blessed by God, but making choices like fleshly or like selfishly or whatever. Like maybe they're taking like the faster path, and that's fine, but like their destination is going to look so different than my destination. And even like not on such an extreme level, but like people who are getting married like without God, right? Like I'm sure if I didn't want God at the like root of my marriage, I could easily go find someone and get married really fast. But that marriage is not going to look any like nearly as beautiful as one that I like wait for and like is intended for me. It would just not be anything compared to waiting for what God has.
Yeah. There's a sermon I heard a long time ago. He always talked about your romantic partners, and he said there's always good, better, and best. And he said it's okay if you find a guy and he's good. That means your marriage is going to be good. God's still going to bless it. It'll be fine. Even if you knew, I think there might be better out there for me, and I feel like God's telling me maybe not marry him, but you did anyways. It's still going to be a really good marriage. And then he says, then there's better, and then there's best. And sometimes the best is not what you think it's going to be, and it takes longer to find that person. And it sounds crazier. It's not what you it's none of your expectations, all of those things, but it's going to be the best marriage, and God loves the best marriages. And he emphasized it's not a bad thing to marry someone who's good for you or better for you. But don't you want to wait for the best person?
So, your verse, Romans 12:9-19. Love from the center of who you are. Don't fake it. Run for dear life from evil. Hold on for dear life to good. Be good friends who love deeply. Practice playing second fiddle. Don't burn out. Keep yourselves fueled and aflame. Be alert servants of the Master, cheerfully expectant. Don't quit in hard times. Pray all the harder. Help needy Christians. Be inventive in hospitality. Bless your enemies. No cursing under your breath. Laugh with your happy friends when they're happy. Share tears when they're down. Get along with each other. Don't be stuck up. Make friends with nobodies. Don't be the great somebody. Don't hit back. Discover beauty in everyone. If you've got it in you, get along with everybody. Don't insist on getting even. That's not for you to do. I'll do the judging, says God. I'll take care of it.
I first discovered this verse, and it's super long. Obviously, it's not just one sentence of the Bible, but it encapsulates everything that I want to be as a person. I think it truly shows me how someone should live in order to trust God, because you need to trust God to love your enemy. That's really hard. Love from the center of who you are. That means to be genuine and be humble and be real. Everything that I want to be to someone else and to me, to myself, that's respecting yourself, actually being a real person and not being fake. You're honoring yourself and you're honoring others. And it also honors God. And I feel like all of these verses, the 12-21, just perfectly encapsulates it for me.
So, if people want to find you and listen to your music, how do they do that? How do they support you?
That would be awesome. Our band name is Caza, C-A-Z-A in all caps. But the easiest way to find us would probably be to head to our Instagram. It's caza.music.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and being vulnerable and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for letting me share my story and to be vulnerable and speak about important things that have happened in my life. And I hope that it can help some other people too by listening.
Stay up to date on the next release by subscribing and following us on Instagram at Main Character Collection, where you can also find the link to purchase the crewneck Cassandra designed. And as always, remember, your story has a purpose.